Mass Effect 2, the second Mass Effect. If we're talking sequential order, this one came after the first. Alright, let's hop right into it. Let's start by talking about the gameplay. Overall, it's a much smoother experience. The gunplay and the movement is a lot better and feels less dated. In the first one, you have a sprint mechanic that runs down really fast and really only allows you to sprint in a straight line. In two, it gives you a much more adaptable sprint mechanic, I guess I would say. It lasts a lot longer and you can turn a lot smoother with it. And the gunplay overall feels like it's evolved with the time and is taking inspiration from more modern series. It's still not the smoothest or the best gunplay I've ever experienced in a game, but it is nice that it's took a step up from the first game. The gunplay also doesn't place the same importance that the first game did on the specific type of gun that you're using, the modifications that you put on the gun that you find throughout the world, and the ammo type that you need to put on the gun. In the first game, these are all very important to make sure that you're doing a significant amount of damage and that your damage output is keeping up with the level ups that you're getting throughout the game. Your choices now affect cinematic sequences as well as the dialogue choices, meaning you can make choices in the cinematic sequences with QuickTime events, but also the choices you've chosen before can have influence on the cinematic events that come up. The graphics quality is immediately a step up. Even on the Legendary Edition, you can tell that there's a decent improvement from the first game to the second game. The body and face rigs have also been improved and basically remade. And while this does lend several cinematic scenes to look a lot smoother and the overall game to look more immersive, it does sometimes break and people's arms or something will break back or something. The space exploration style of gameplay is really evolved in this game. In the first game, you're kind of slowly moving from planet to planet with no worry on fuel or anything really, and you just kind of find planets to land on them, and go and explore. In this game, you travel between planets using your fuel. You take use of mini mass relays, which will transfer you through space. And the game will give you a percentage of how much of the system that you've explored, which is really nice. A big upgrade from one, because in one you would be landing on random planets and just hope that you remember which ones you've already landed on. It does feel longer to travel between these planets, but overall, with the upgrade in immersion and overall story building, I think it's definitely worth it. Another mini game that's been enhanced is the different hacking mini games that you come across in Mass Effect. In the first one, it's a weird kind of puzzle that you're just kind of that you could basically brute force at any point, just by spamming left click. In Mass Effect 2, the hacking mini games are far more involved. Either you need to be looking for the exact same patterns as the game shows you to finish the hacking, or you need to be connecting certain symbols to other symbols within a period of time. Though it does take often a lot longer, like the space exploration, at the same time, it does make it feel like you're doing a lot more and makes the gaming experience overall feel more worthwhile, rather than something that you kind of just want to skip over. Overall, the missions in this game feel a lot more straightforward and to the point. In Mass Effect 1, if you go to a side planet and you land, you kind of explore the whole place and see the different flora and fauna around. In Mass Effect 2, if you land on a planet that has a side mission, you kind of go straight into it. You know what you're gonna do. You're kind of constricted within the map that it gives you, with less exploration. While this does help things move along, it is a bit of a disappointment that you can't have the same level of exploration as you could in the first one. All right, now if we look at the overall plot and world building of the game, it immediately feels a lot darker and more urgent than in one. In the first game, you're just an alliance guy trying to do what you can, and you're given a task to try and become Special Task Force. In this one, in the first 3 minutes, you die and then get injected with blue Gatorade, so that's great. Um, the world sets you up to go in blind, but it also will greatly benefit if you have your save game from the first game. Because you just died, it's fine if you don't know anything, but if you do know the world from the first game, that's great too. Many of your actions from the first game's save will be ported over to the second, so that it'll come back up in different news or even some choices, and occasionally even people and planets will be completely affected by your choices in the previous game, which is a really cool impact. One of the biggest things I'd say Mass Effect 2 does to kind of enhance the overall world that Mass Effect 1 didn't. Mass Effect 1 relies a lot on the codex entries that you're constantly getting, which is just logs and logs of text walls that you're supposed to read to get more information on the overall world. Where Mass Effect 2 really relies a lot more on verbal communication and storytelling. You have a lot more conversations with your companions and a lot more cinematic sequences that kind of teach you the world, as well as the politics and urgent states of everything that's going on. Though it can sometimes feel like it's taking forever watching all these different cutscenes and listening to all these different backstories, it is a far more digestible way for the player to understand the overall world than walls and walls and walls of text like the first game gave you. And it makes all the characters and planets feel more interesting because you're hearing it from someone that you might think matters, or just hearing a voice behind all the text feels more impactful than just reading it yourself. Because of all this new dialogue with different characters, the companions and their quests feel a lot more important and interesting than ever before. Each companion is interesting, unlike the first game where a couple were less so. Um, and even though I mean, at least I felt myself slightly leaning towards the companions from the first game more than the second game. I never disliked or wanted to see any of the companions from the second game fail in any way, and I felt good about helping them. Each of their quests also gives you great insight into more of the world behind what's happening in Mass Effect as a general, which really makes you feel it makes you want to play the game more and learn more. Really, the lack of codex entries and the focus on dialogue in Mass Effect 2 is probably its greatest benefit and the best thing that BioWare changed between the two games. The worlds are also far more diverse in Mass Effect 2. Where in Mass Effect 1, if you went down to explore certain planets, they would look very similar to planets that you've already been on. In number 2, BioWare takes great strides to kind of make each world look different, interesting, and thematically different in each way. This also extends to different set pieces that you take on in missions. There's some really, really interesting ones that are completely different from the rest of the game, like taking on a rogue AI that's trying to kill you in a ship, or a entire zombie mission. Even the bigger story missions just feel out of the blue and unique. Mass Effect 2 also introduces DLC to the series for the first time. Overall, the DLC is really interesting and fits the world really well. I only wish that I could see more of it, is the biggest problem. The characters that they add are really interesting, and their companion quests are great, but I just wish that they felt more in line with the story. You could get them very early on, but once you do, they just kind of sit in their cabins, and you can take them out on quests with you, but they don't have any impact on the overall story. I understand that these DLC characters came after the overall game was released, but it just still feels like I like them, but I wish they were there more. This is also the case with the Firewalker DLC, where you get to drive around a hover car, which is nice because you don't get to drive around the car from the first game, but you don't use it that much. Overall, the best DLC, though, I'd have to say, is the Shadow Broker DLC. It really gives the world far more information on top of what you've already got. It calls back to the previous game. It introduces beloved characters again. And the dialogue specifically in this DLC feels far more natural and off the cuff than it does in the rest of the game. The voice actors for Shepard and Liara really feel like they're just having a good time, and You give a lot more personality to the characters than you see throughout the rest of the game. I don't know when I'd play it. If you play it earlier, then you get more benefits from it. But if you play it later, it kind of feels like a nice wrap up to the rest of the game. Also, you get to do like a cool flying car chase, which is lit, and watch somebody get punched. So 10 out of 10. At the end of the day, I'd have to give Mass Effect 2 9 poisoned drinks out of 10.
I am the very model of a scientist Solarian. I've studied species Turian, Asari, and Batarian. I'm quite good at genetics as a subset of biology because I am an expert, which I know is a tautology. My xenoscience studies range from urban to agrarian. I am the very model of a scientist Solarian.